Hello and welcome to my introduction video to Aiuos. My name is Barak, Barak Lionel Zan, and I have invented a new language. It is a new language due to a few things. One, because it is a new language having new words to it. Two, because it is a new language having its own symbol for each sound, speakable sound chosen for the language. Three, because each letter got its own name to it, including the symbol the sound has gotten. The language Aiuos is very special and made with a lot of care and love by me. I invented it, I created it, I drew it, I designed it, I invented the words, I invented the symbols, and I invented its rules, and its content, and its name. Rule number one, there will be zero negativity in Aiuos, which means there will be no words of negative nature, as well as no drawings of negative nature, or any bad influence. Rule number two, the vowel letters will be spoken as they are, which means that I, E, O, U, and A will be pronounced as they are. The letter I will have the sound of E, the letter E will have the sound of E, the letter O will have the sound of O, letter U will have the sound of U, and the letter A will have the sound of A, right? So each of these sounds, E, O, U, A, will have its own symbol, right? In Aiuos, so its own letter, and also its own name. So I'm going to give you an example. So the sound E has a symbol with the name of VE, and the sound of E has a symbol with the name of Veon. The sound of O will have a symbol with the name of Vio. The sound of U will have a symbol with the name of Aiul, and the sound of A will have a symbol with the name of Va. So there is a twist to the language Aiuos. There are 6 missing letters in Aiuos, which are B as in boy, D as in dog, G as in game, P as in pet, T as in toy, and Z as in zone. Although instead of having a low sum of letters, I added letters of the sounds of CH as in charming, GH as in joy, SH as in shell, TH as in theme, and ZH as in love thy neighbor. And each of these sounds is going to have its own symbol of its own. There's also a symbol of its own for the sound of J, as in the name Jacqueline. And I split the R into rolling R and consonantal R. So it's going to be R and R. So it's going to be keep it real or keep it real. Another cool thing is that each of the symbols, each of the letters sounds is a shape instead of lines drawn together, right? So these are closed shapes, right? Moving on, there is a bonus to the language too. Each of the sounds E, O, U, A has a color to it, right? So E is going to be yellow, E is going to be blue, O is going to be green, U is going to be red, and A is going to be white. So instead of using the vowels, right, E, O, U, A, we can color the letter on the inside so that the reader could understand how to read the word. Alright, so we got 20 letters in the main section of the language, and we got 3 more letters as side letters. Cool, so we have 23 letters in total. I'm going to start with the main section, and then I'm going to tell you about the side section, right? So in the main section, the first letter is going to be Veon, right? So Veon is pretty cool. It's the sound of E, right? And it is drawn as the bottom half of a circle. The second letter is going to be Gen, and it is drawn as a small circle right in the middle of the text area, and it represents the sound of Ja. The third letter is going to be Vio, and Vio represents the sound of O, which is drawn as a big circle. The fourth letter is going to be Psi, and Psi represents the sound of S, and it is drawn as 2 medium-sized circles right next to each other. The fifth letter is going to be Thy, and it represents the sound of The, and it is drawn as 3 circles piled up in a little pyramid, in the shape of a pyramid, right? On like one on top of the other 2. The sixth letter is going to be mish, and mish represents the sound of sh, and it is going to be drawn as 3 circles right next to each other in a straight line. The seventh letter is going to be the yi, and it represents the sound of ya, and it is drawn as a small square right in the middle of the text area. The eighth letter is going to be rock, and it represents the sound of a rough R. So it's going to be, keep it real, right? So that's rock, and it's drawn as a big square. It is a big square. The ninth letter is going to be called may, and may represents the sound of m, and it is drawn as 2 medium-sized squares right next to each other. So the 10th letter is going to be called Raoul, and Raoul represents the sound of rolling R, just as I pronounce it when I speak English, and it is drawn as 3 small squares drawn next to each other in a straight line. The 11th letter is going to be called Viv, and Viv represents the sound of va, and it is drawn as a big triangle. The 12th letter is going to be called Hov, and Hov represents the sound of ha, as in H, and it is drawn as 3 rectangles piled up on top of one another, but they aren't exactly piled up as much as they're floating on top of one another. There's a space between them. The 13th letter is going to be called VI. Alright, so we got VI from before, and now we got VI, which represents, it's like the difference between Y and I. So we got like a Y and we got an E. So VI, which is now, is going to be the 13th letter, and it's going to be representing the sound of E, and it is drawn as the shape of an 8 lying down. The difference is that that an 8 is blocked in the middle, and that VI is actually has the space flowing from one side to another. The 14th letter is going to be called Aiuos, and Aiuos represents the sound of U, and it is drawn as an 8 standing, just a regular 8, only the difference is that an 8 is blocked between one side and another, and in Aiuos the space is flowing from bottom to top and top to bottom. The 15th letter is going to be called Vil, and it represents the sound of L, and is drawn as something that appears to be as a sand clock. The 16th letter is going to be called Lon, and it represents the sound of N, and is drawn as a bow tie. So it's the same as Vil, only it is lying down, like, and it flows from left to right instead of bottom to top. The 17th letter is going to be called Chav, and it represents the sound of Cha, and it is drawn as something that appears to be like a head of a cat with 2 pointy ears like on the side. The 18th letter is going to be called Ov, and Ov surprisingly represents the sound of K, even though it doesn't have a K in its name. So it's going to be called Ov to present the sound of K, and it is drawn as something which appears to be looking like a square missing a triangle piece on its left side. So the 19th letter is going to be called Hao, and it represents the sound of Wa. So this is just like a W does. And it is drawn as 3 ellipses standing right next to each other. The 20th letter and the last in the main section is going to be called Va, and it represents the sound of A. So it's going to be a vowel letter. And that basically sums it for the main section for all 20 letters in Aiuos. Moving on to the side letters, we have 3 going on over there, and I'm going to read them to you right now. So the first letter in the side section is going to be called Theo, and Theo represents the sound of Th, right? And it is drawn as a table sitting with 2 legs on left and right sides. Second letter is going to be called ij, and it represents the sound of G, and it is drawn as something which appears to be looking like a ventilator fan with 3 arms. The third and last letter in the side letter section is going to be called skew off, and skew off represents the sound of F, and it is drawn as something which appears to be like a square missing a triangle piece on its right side. And thank you very much for checking out my video. Again, my name is Barak Zan, and you can send me an email. Emails, just write up some comments. The email's in the info section below. So you can send me an email, you can write a comment, let me know what you think about the language, use it, enjoy it, just give your opinions, and I wish you well.